Everyone thinks they know the Trump fortune: skyscrapers with his name on them, golf courses, a few casinos that came and went. That was the story for decades. But the real story of the Trump family's wealth today looks almost nothing like that anymore. And most people have no idea how big it's actually gotten, or where the money is really coming from now, because somewhere in the last couple of years, the Trump family quietly built one of the fastest growing fortunes in America. Not through hotels. Not through real estate, at least not primarily. Through something almost nobody saw coming: cryptocurrency, licensing deals, and a media company that trades more on hype than on earnings. And it isn't just one person's fortune anymore. It's a family enterprise, with adult children, in-laws, and even a teenager, all building their own individual slices of a fortune that now stretches into the billions. So let's actually break it down. Who has what, where it came from, and just how much richer this family has become in a remarkably short window of time. Start at the top. Donald Trump's own net worth has been estimated by Forbes at somewhere in the range of $6.5 to $7 billion, heading into 2026. Depending on which snapshot in time you look at, since a large chunk of that fortune now sits in assets that move by the day. That's a staggering jump from where he stood just a couple of years earlier. Forbes had him at roughly $2.3 to $2.4 billion in early 2024, before he returned to the White House. In other words, in the space of about 2 years, his estimated net worth roughly tripled. What changed? Not the golf courses, not the hotels, though those did see a bump. What changed was crypto. Trump launched a venture called World Liberty Financial in the fall of 2024, just before winning back the presidency. It's a cryptocurrency platform, and according to Forbes reporting, the token sales tied to that venture alone generated over $1 billion in revenue, with the Trump family's entity taking home the large majority of it. Layer on top of that a separate Trump-branded meme coin, and digital assets alone are estimated to have added somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 billion to his personal fortune in a single year. For a man who spent most of his career being described, first and foremost, as a real estate developer, that's an almost total reinvention of how the wealth gets made. But crypto isn't the only new engine. There's also the licensing business. And this is where things get interesting, because it's less about buildings and more about the brand itself. In 2025, financial disclosures showed Trump earning millions of dollars from licensing his name and image onto consumer products. Watches, sneakers, fragrances, guitars, even a branded edition of the Bible. It's not a huge line item next to the crypto numbers, but it's a reminder of just how many different channels this family has found to convert fame and political power into cash. And then there's the more traditional stuff, dusted off and reactivated. Foreign real estate deals picked up sharply, with Forbes reporting a jump of several 100% in revenue from international property licensing in a single year. Gulf resorts, slung a soft spot in the Trump business empire, bounced back too, reportedly adding hundreds of millions to the estimated net worth on their own. And in early 2026, the Trump family's business office announced a reported $7 billion real estate project in Saudi Arabia. A hotel, a golf course, and luxury homes planned for the historic city of Diriyah. Trump himself said publicly that he has nothing to do with the day-to-day family business, but the project underscores just how far the family's commercial reach now extends, well beyond U.S. borders. Now here's where it gets bigger than just one man, because Donald Trump is really only the headline of a much wider financial network. And some of the most explosive growth in this family hasn't happened to him at all. It's happened to his kids. Take Eric Trump, who Forbes estimated at around $750 million. Most of that has nothing to do with hotels either. Eric, along with his brother Don Jr., co-owns a crypto mining venture called American Bitcoin, and both brothers hold stakes in World Liberty Financial. Earlier in the year, the two of them traveled to the Middle East to finalize a licensing deal for a Trump-branded golf course in Qatar. A deal that, on its own, illustrates how the family's business model has shifted from owning physical properties outright to licensing the Trump name onto properties built and owned by others. Don Jr., meanwhile, was estimated by Forbes at around $500 million, largely from the same crypto ventures. Together, the two brothers have become the public face of the family's push into digital assets, a business category that essentially didn't exist for this family 5 years ago, and now represents one of its largest sources of new wealth. Then there's Ivanka Trump, whose own individual net worth was estimated by Forbes at around $100 million, smaller than her brother's on paper, at least by that particular estimate, but her household tells a very different story once you count her husband. Jared Kushner crossed the billion-dollar mark in 2025, according to Forbes, powered by his private equity firm, Affinity Partners, along with his family's real estate company, Kushner Companies, and a network of Middle Eastern investors and backers he built relationships with during his time as a White House advisor in Trump's first term. Between the two of them, Ivanka and Jared's household is arguably sitting on more combined wealth than any other branch of the family outside of Donald Trump himself. And then there's the one nobody saw coming: Barron Trump. Just 19 years old, a sophomore at NYU, and according to Forbes, already sitting on an estimated net worth of around $150 million, more than either of his adult half-brothers had managed to accumulate independently at that stage. What makes Barron's story even more remarkable is how he got there. By multiple accounts, Barron is the one who introduced his father to cryptocurrency in the first place, walking him through the basics of digital wallets before World Liberty Financial ever existed. Trump himself has told the story publicly, joking about his son having, in his words, 4 different crypto wallets before he even understood what a wallet was. Barron reportedly holds a large tranche of tokens that remain locked and untradeable for now. Tokens Forbes estimates could be worth several $100 million more once they eventually unlock. For a teenager barely 2 years removed from high school, it's an almost unheard of financial head start. And by some estimates, he's already out-earned family members decades older than him. Melania Trump has carved out her own smaller but notable income stream. Forbes estimated it at around $20 million, coming from speaking engagements, a book, a documentary project, and her own branded meme coin. It's modest next to her stepson's and stepdaughter's husband, but it's still money earned largely independent of the main family businesses, which says something about how many different members of this family have found their own individual lane into the crypto and media economy. Tiffany Trump, the daughter from Trump's marriage to Marla Maples, has stayed almost entirely out of the spotlight financially. She wasn't included in Forbes's most recent breakdown of family net worth at all. She's a Georgetown law graduate who has kept her career largely private, and her husband, Michael Boulos, comes from a wealthy business family with international ties. Exact numbers for their household simply aren't public, which, in a family this closely tracked by financial media, is itself notable. Add it all up, and you start to see the real shape of this story. It isn't one massive fortune sitting in one man's bank account. It's a constellation. A president worth several $billion, 2 adult sons, each worth hundreds of millions from crypto mining and token ventures, a son-in-law who broke into billionaire territory through private equity and Middle Eastern deal-making, and a teenage son who may already be quietly building the next generation of that wealth before he's even finished college. Multiple financial outlets have pointed to the same underlying shift. Crypto, not real estate, is now the single largest driver of new wealth for this family, accounting for billions of dollars in gains across just the last couple of years. There's another layer to this story that's worth sitting with for a second, because it's part of what makes this moment in the Trump family's finances so unusual. The timing. Nearly all of this growth happened while Donald Trump was sitting in the Oval Office. World Liberty Financial launched right before the 2024 election. The bulk of the licensing deals, the golf course agreements in the Middle East, the foreign real estate projects. Almost all of it closed after Inauguration Day 2025. Ethics watchdogs and several members of Congress have raised questions about a sitting president's family running crypto ventures and striking international business deals. At the same time, he's setting foreign and economic policy, since it's difficult for outside observers to fully separate where the politics ends and the business begins. The Trump family and its representatives have consistently maintained that the president himself is not involved in the day-to-day operations of the family businesses, even as those businesses have grown dramatically on his watch. Whatever side of that debate you land on, it's a genuinely unusual situation in American history. A first family building a multi-billion-dollar crypto and licensing empire in real time. While one of its members runs the country, it also helps to put this fortune in some historical context. Other presidents have left office wealthier than they arrived, and some have had family members build serious business empires of their own. The Kennedys, the Bushes, and more recently the Bidens, whose son Hunter's business dealings became their own political flashpoint. But none of those families saw anything close to this scale or this speed. Going from a low single-digit billion-dollar estimate to multiple family members independently crossing the 100 million and even billion-dollar thresholds inside of roughly 2 years is not something that has a clean precedent in modern presidential history. That's part of why financial reporters keep coming back to this story. It isn't just that the family is rich. It's that the mechanism for getting rich is so new and so directly tied to one specific administration's moment in power. It's worth being upfront about something else too. These are estimates, not confirmed account balances. Forbes, Bloomberg, and other outlets that track wealth like this rely on public filings, disclosed deals, and models for valuing volatile assets like crypto tokens and newly listed stock, and those models can disagree with each other by hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars depending on the source and the day. Trump Media, the parent company of Truth Social, is a good example. Forbes has valued it around $2 billion, even as the underlying business posted a steep net loss and only a few $1,000,000 in actual sales, with analysts noting that the stock price is driven far more by investor speculation than by operating performance. Crypto is even more volatile. The same tokens that added $1.5 billion to somebody's paper net worth this year could just as easily lose a big chunk of that value next year. So when you hear a number like $7 billion, treat it the way you'd treat any snapshot of a fast-moving portfolio, a real estimate, built on real deals and real disclosures, but a snapshot all the same, not a locked-in fact. What isn't up for debate is the direction of travel. 2 years ago, this was a family whose fortune was widely seen as having stalled out, propped up mostly by a real estate brand that had seen better decades. Today, it's a family that has found an entirely new set of engines: crypto ventures, international licensing, private equity, media speculation, and used all of them at once, across multiple generations, to build one of the most talked about fortunes in the country. So the next time somebody says the Trump family is just a real estate dynasty, you can tell them that story is years out of date. The empire now runs on tokens, deals, and licensing agreements that stretch from Doha to Diriyah, and it's not just one man cashing in. It's a whole family doing it together, at a speed that's honestly hard to overstate. And this is very likely not the final number. Barron's locked tokens haven't unlocked yet. The Diriyah project in Saudi Arabia hasn't broken ground. Affinity Partners is still deploying capital across new deals. If the last 2 years are any indication of the pace this family moves at, the numbers we've just walked through may look almost modest by the time the next set of estimates comes out. Thanks for watching. If you want more breakdowns of how the world's wealthiest and most powerful families actually make their money, hit subscribe. Because there's a lot more of this story still to come.